So we have an opportunity to learn that. If you don't have a daily practice, he's offered to teach a couple of things. It includes Heart Sutra, Tara, which is wisdom, Tara meditation, which is compassion, and what, Vajrasattva recitation, which is a purification. So these wonderful things can happen here for 2 Thursdays after this course. Is anyone interested?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so now we are going to second session. I told us only 5 minutes now.
I'll take some more time.
Yes. I just joke. Okay. That inji chumbo kola to win sinero. That step chupa de marela. Nobody chupa. Master teacher teacher yon inji step nobody. Nobody to win sinero. That step nobody kabe senata yon chamba de la inji ro. Tashi shuvun tanda yon chamba sunye di ro simje thamje ta dewala kobadi ngarama chigi isini lodi yon chamba di sa sinero. Tene simse tamje dewa cover the Narana Chigi lay some of the level Madeva Imbaina or Dunga de Tower Marachi lay Ludi Letu Samare Senero. Kaisera Dunga de Tower Devadi, Devala Koya Tadala. The Devala Koduna, that Dunga de Tower Chore Senero, Things up when you Devala Tebor Devada, and a Dunga Tower Deva anybody when you detect the Budu Senero. Things up that you did Mema Dunja Gonita, Ninja Chambodi. 이게 년토다 안젤라 내와지 로 매비 김제 카르레스나 페나 년토다 안젤다 인제 요레스니로 인제 요레나야 도와심 삼로탄다 만도레 도와심제 탐제 동을레 테나 치마롱 시네 삼로디 년토다 안젤 이가 요레스니로 도와심제 탐제 동을레 테나 치마롱에 삼로 다 윤제 맹아 둔지고네 인제 첨보디 로아 심제도 동안에 전에 찌 마롱세 대다워디 동안에 차와데 나기 차웠으니 로디 사람아 숙천부 레고도 거는 칼로다 이게 로 삼로다나 마다워지 레기 도와스니로 대인상 간다 유대 명아도 인제디 로아 심제도 동안에 차와데 나기 차워라니 요새 이게 녀라기 주지 인제디 로아 심제도 동안에 전에 찌 마롱라에 삼로디 인다 대인상 이게 랑이치고 시대 등이 일로다 아니 심지 탐지 유튜브도 장조 등이 일로 니버데 만나올려 송았으니 그러와 니트다 대본 멤버도 다가러와 아니잖아 랑이치고 코갈레 타면 뒤송 그냥 삼로 당겨 오러와 딱 맞아 단다 장주기 초도 심지 탐지 유튜브도 아니 라면조에 장조 토벌 지기 이제는 송거를 대행사 아니잖아 로와 심지 탐지 유튜브도 삼로 당겨 오더라서 때나 윤제 명아도 인제 첨보다 지단이 인제니라 개발 숙성부리에서 로지 개발 상도다나 대대적
So the next step, that's step number 5. Is a great compassion, the Mahakaruna. And so before we look at the great compassion, first of all we need to look at compassion in general. And if you look at the hearers and the self-liberators, and even they do possess compassion. That's because compassion in that sense, that to really want to see all sentient beings to be happy, that thought, compassion in that sense, you can see that in self-liberators and the hearers. But then the great compassion is not only you wanted to see that the sentient beings be free of suffering. On top of that, you wanted to be the person, to be the agent, really to take that place. So the difference is not only an attitude here, but also a kind of an ingredient. So again, we all possess this compassion to want to see all sentient beings free from suffering. So that's compassion. And the great compassion in this instruction is not only we desire for all the sentient beings be free from suffering, but also have that determination and resolve that we will do that, and that makes a great compassion, and that's a great compassion we're talking here. And so here you can see an extra step in the great compassion, that you have the resolve to do that. You want to be that agent, really make sure that happens. And so in order to have that strong resolve to really free all sentient beings from suffering, first of all, you have to go back and have the loving compassion. If you do not love them, if you don't have this compassion to really love them, you wouldn't have the desire and the feeling to free them from suffering. So again, it's a cause and effect relationship between the two.
rangi mapu chikbala sumrira niji chimbe tsingi shade pama dila pugu chikile madomi mana kola tsewa khazuli gida tsue tesamgi ani dungal chingi semche tela ya tsewa diga sellewa loti ani niji chimbe tsingi shayo re senirwa pena rangi mapu chikbala tsewe tsue samgi ani dunga da tendogi rangi ngangi kewi lo niji chimbe tsingi shayo rwa
diyo mara rangi pudu dunga dema che dunga ke yo mara rangi pudu tsuwa kazu yobjo rwa dina pudu dunga che namba che di yo mara
di ko mara pena tsingi shayo de rangi mapu chikbala rwa soso ya ama diki pu chikbala tsewa kazu dhugu rwa te tsuegi ani rwa simche tamjela dindigi tsewa je dhugu re senirwa dilewa niji chimbu, dili lo dilewa ibayina niji chimbu da tuindi zoga insay
da di nga gandhi chwe to tengi yungun chambu sungi rang pu dile zoga chi zoga yidungwa dile rwa yidungwa lewa ibayina kola kare chena soso gashin to shingani che dhugu rwa injina des Geshe des ke bochi se 그래서 뭐 치 컨벤션 이자도 담고 so here, what is the best example of a great compassion? The example again we use here is the only child to a mother. So the love or the compassion, the great compassion a mother has toward her only child. And when you observe how much love the mother has toward that child, and that's a compassion. And then when you extend that to all sentient beings, like a mother's love toward the only child, you have this same compassion toward all sentient beings. That is an illustration or the example of great compassion. And then I asked Geshe, when we were discussing about the loving compassion, we were also giving the same example. But I said in Tibetan it's a little bit easier to understand the context, the difference. In English it's a little bit confusing because you're using both the word compassion. So I said, okay, when we talk about the loving compassion, we were told again love toward the only child. And then for the great compassion towards it's really hard in English to see the differences. And then Geshe responded by saying that the first one, the loving compassion, the feeling here is no matter how the child behaves, you still always have this really wonderful feeling toward the child. Like sometimes the child could be misbehaved or it could be naughty, but your feeling toward the child is always lovely, always this loving. And that's the loving compassion. The second one is this compassion toward only child, meaning that you want the child to be free of suffering. You want all the good things happen to the child, but not the negative things. So that's two different concepts. And when you extend the both feelings toward all sentient beings, then that's become the hour of your practice here. 그래서 먼저 남주변을 두고 풀어서 마시는.
네.
되게
점이 이제 겨워 챙겨를 어디 땅이 좀 들려와.
인심으로.
네.
또 디나를 두고서 또랑디.
네. 두고라 이제 먼저다 동물증이 나타냐. 소소 부침만도 매워나 부부디 시원 나대 봐야나 콜라 가이를 주고 섬네 시우치로 대표점기 도와심제 좀 동물들 나를 심제들 디리지로 질려고 그랬어요.
네. 제가 인지 센시드나야. 생기시라는 그 부디 비에 예지다 유명 상담을
담모 말. 그 부디라 봐다 동물 왜냐면은 부디라 자와 춤을 되더라. 되게 쇠와 가져 주에 쇠등이 다 동물 징기 심제 탐제 가려는 동물 왜냐면은 쇠와 네가 레바 임바이나 다 소소가 이제 친구들 총발해. 거기 딱 쇠와 가져 줘서 그 셋이 찍바지 콜라 줘고 심제 탐제라 dro나 되는 로지랑 라슈지 있게나
And so I asked him to clarify again, because when we recite this Guru Puja in Lama Chöpa, you see toward the end of the Guru Puja, when we generate great compassion, saying a mother who have this amazing compassion toward the suffering child. So here they use the word suffering child. And that's great compassion. I said, then here, when Geshe gave example, he didn't use the word suffering. He said, toward the child. Then I said, you have to think the child is in kind of state of suffering, and in order to have that great compassion. He said, here, the example is not. In that, you just see how the mother laughs, or it's so difficult, how the mother have this great compassion toward the child, and it's almost like the unconditional compassion. There's that other thing. He didn't use the word unconditional, but there's this regardless of how and why and what, you still have that instinct love. And that is a great compassion. And when we extend that to all sentient beings, this unconditional, unyielding love and compassion, and when we're able to generate that, then we fulfill the goal here of creating the great compassion.
소진 찬다 라오메 바이 돌아 니제 교가 대라 되었으니 답발은 더하고 숨만해서 또 콜로 코아는지 코르데로 어때다 심지 차가는 민네로 다 코아나라 게스는 동안도 때도 되어 자원이 나와인도 코랑식 일레딩도 왔으니 얘네가 좀 미고 숨백감라야 동아지 심지 경에 섬로 땅 되어 있바이나 다 기부 잡아 땅에도 심지 대 말레 바이바이나 양 예링도 차이도 뒤에서 로콤실 얘기 되다 대진마서 도마들라 마시 콜라나 땅님지 직시에 것도 알아. 찬님도 제와에는 jelada 소소 대화이네 동을이네 가릴레바에는 콜라 찬님을 얘기 된다고 소리도 tinza 뭐 동을 삼로 땅 먹어지 소소 아마 이 폴라 제와도 가져도 소 대담기 아니 로아심제 탐제 콜라 네디 심제 탐제라 제와 네가 레바 임바이나 다 되네 이제 친구 라야디 소소를 유라 개발 있다는 이 시점을 기비 세지도 어디 된다갔다 동아지 심지 인지미 좀 명 뭐하죠. 이나야다 로 컴딜 대기 된다야 소소게 동아 깽이 삼로 따나야 소소락직 야 코알았다 네버 주위에 개발 여유기로 얘는 단도마서 심지 탐지 자주초도 심게 된다라 인사 심지 탐지 코알아 내디 깽이 인사 또 콜라 동아를 모두 대원 내가 그때도 대원 용서요 말어.
So Geshe was clarifying the point about conditional, this compassion, the love toward the only child. Like that, a mother, we also should have this kind of love and compassion toward all sentient beings, regardless of their state. And when you're able to have that kind of a compassion, then you met the training goal of generating great compassion for the mind training purpose. And then he again clarified that you do not need to visualize that the child in this context is a suffering child. Likewise, you do not visualize your love toward all the suffering sentient beings. Maybe for initial training purpose, there's a benefit of thinking that all the sentient beings in samsara are suffering, and that I have this amazing compassion. But then he said that there's a problem with that too, because if you kind of constantly generate compassion toward the suffering sentient beings, then you also tend to neglect the unsuffering or the sentient beings that are not suffering or going through these storms, and then it could be a biased, almost like a training. So initially it's better to really see all sentient beings in a samsara, and you have this amazing compassion toward all of them, and do not think of them right now going through this really great suffering. Because initially, right at the beginning, we talked about how to generate equanimity. We talked about all sentient beings, and so that's very important here. We carry on that practice. And also, you remember the Chandikirti talked about, when he talked about the nature of the sentient beings, they are suffering because they're constantly in the cyclic existence already. So you don't have to emphasize this nature of the suffering, because when you establish a sentient being, and they're already, as part of their being is a suffering, it's already there. You don't have to emphasize here. And for our meditation purpose, try to train your mind toward all sentient beings, and that you have this amazing unconditional compassion and love to them. And when you have that feeling, when it naturally comes, then it's said this training purpose of the cause and effect, 7-point cause and effect instruction is achieved.
That have the sum that in Senata, have the sum ring along so that a dungeon and Mondo della Tanyum Seneche, Dezela Marche, Tintin, Tinzo, Yoni Chamba Ninje, that Gundema, that Nainachi, that Dizoma Roro, Geshe Gavare, Geshe Gavatam, Mahimbata, Kiranzogi, Ijimishi della Suzu, Tizu Toso, Dunero, that Tanyum Senene, Candidoro, the Marche, Tintin, Tizo, Yon Chamba, Tondado, Toso, Mashi, and so the Chenanda, Manjoa. That busy in a mother go get mix of need the way Kawa Samaro. In a society, Elena to the to some of the tongue. Chick, Pajit, Chick, Dumati, not the way, and Tando, Injum for you, did so chatero, that is all some Yansi, Langala Drubi Kablan, Susugita, Chambalang it did, Ninja it did, the Chambalang Ninja never in Baina, that's Zamulin de la Cedilla, she didn't never memory. Kawachima de la Tendu de what Sawani Tokuman, Tanya Diesel, Injimij Usu Gangi is in the Samlo di Kini and Kandu Chuduta, Tosos the Magic, Gomji Gaptoba in Baina, and that Tardugi Deotanda, Chanjugi Semla Yedita, Nomadu Tusari.
So during the past 3 weeks, we have been talking about the 7 steps of cause and effect on the generating bodhicitta. And so initially we talked about how important it is to generate equanimity, and then followed by recognizing that all sentient beings have been our mother, and then recalling their kindness to us, and followed by really repaying the attitude of the resolve to repaying their kindness. And then we talked about the loving compassion, followed by great compassion. So I think the most important thing is to really contemplate on them, to meditate, to reflect. And that's really very important, because through that kind of process you have to generate bodhicitta. And so meditation doesn't only exclude to sitting on a cushion and doing meditation. You can do this kind of meditation in the train, in the subway, especially when you see an individual or a being, a suffering being. Immediately really meditate on this, because this is a great opportunity. And we see suffering everywhere, and so there's an opportunity for us to practice that outside of our the meditation room. You can meditate while you're walking, and you can meditate, the loving compassion and the great compassion while you're walking or while you're traveling. And by doing that, then you can really get a serene and peaceful attitude. And this will really bring you a much more kind of a long-term peace. And once you kind of go through this kind of meditation, regardless of you're in meditation room or traveling or in the subway, and as we really go through this kind of a training, then we will be able to generate the bodhicitta through this kind of approach.
단도 레일나라 디네 드베 칼라 미 담이나서 투구로 왔으니 뭐 디르데 삼로 땅베나 돈도 컵도 미고 야가 용사레스니로 맞아 치다니 공데라 아 제공다 인심주 공데라 이제 미고 믹송이 대we 켜봐요 말했으니로 제공다 조금 이외상 랑가도 드베 칼라 땅제 지기 제시만 이 공차도 그랬으니로 대인자마게 가서 도타만 하고 순간에서 제대로 투비트는 날이 벌시 년단 신도 수시에รับ다니로 삼제네라 삼년 남절로 태좀 쳐버렸으면 내가 조금 나도 스무도 왔어요. 뭐 디데지 남바이나 딱 개침 보죠. 딱지 제비 개침으로 왔어요.
So for me meditation doesn't really exclude to sit on a cushion. For me, I think when you travel in subways, it's a great opportunity to practice. Because you see various different kind of human beings, some are going through suffering, the number of different circumstances you are exposed to. As a result, you can really easily use them for your Dharma practice, and it could be very effective. And when we talk about meditation, we talk about analytical meditation, and then the single-pointed, the abiding, calm abiding meditation, analytical and calm abiding meditation. And the analytical meditation is really important because it's kind of a reasoning your mind to see the actual issue. So that's where Lama Tsongkhapa in his prayer text, Tongdama, the beginning, at the middle, and end, in that prayer toward the end, he's saying that by using the intelligence that we're endowed with and really analyze how things are and how things are not, and by using this kind of wisdom to really gain the high intelligence. And so that's where analytical meditation is important, and you can do that while you're traveling, while you're doing something else.
Thank you. Then now we question time.
When you meditate on the 7-step cause and effect method, is it possible to meditate on all 7 steps in one session? So in a way go through each step in kind of a short analysis, in a short kind of way. Is that possible, or is it more suggested that you do one at a time to work to gain subsequent realizations for each one at a time? Because I've heard that you can do both, but I'm wondering what your take is on that.
당고 마셔야 되는 진짜 꼭 방림지 규주도 고멜라로와 미과디 딱딱딱딱 세고 레토가지고 그랬으니로 미뭐 컴도 제마도 봐이나 아니 그 다가서 마실랑이 딘딘딘 다가서 전자주고 삼로 땅 봐이나 맞소 강 미과디 딱딱 소소 레토 말했으니로 단대지 아니 마실 텐데 방한테 교고지고 고멜라 당고 마실을 잠바 숙좀 벌려고 그랬으니 아니 마실 딘딘 딘소 요한서 잠바 숙좀 벌려고 했나 방한테 규주도 공초 때 누가 세트를 다 마서라 간다 마실랑이디 로디 칸데 딜레라 마실랑 손에 보자 마땅바이 베나 다 틴틴 하고 쇼링이 나랑 차셔 보이나 난 냠녀도 메나야다 삼로 땅인데 텐데 손자 다 칼로르다 마실네 바 규주도 디네 고멜라 로 차장라 녀와 쩌민이 녀와 좀 했습니다 쩌민 녀와다 쩌민이 녀와라데 마마 수식이 깨니 알아봐 소도 아마 이 부고를 세워도 원하지 아마 이 부고를 세워도디 김자 삼로 제타모 말아 간데 부고 두세 이거에는 파지 답되어에는 아 이게 부고를 그러면도 꼭 간지를 답되나 답에도 나자타는 김자 저걸 지금 말아 왔어요 어디네 줄로 들려봐 임바에는 다 규주도 공주고 됐습니다 어디네
So when you're asking my experience, I do not have any experience yet on meditating on these chapters. But if I really look at the meditation approach toward this, one you mentioned about going through the entire thing in one session, versus going step by step. To me, going through the step by step is much more effective. That's because when you go through kind of in one session, there are a number of things involved in that meditation: visualization, reasoning, convincing, analyzing, and so on. So there are so many things, and you cannot really go in one session one to the next one. Especially we talk about the cause and effect. When this step 2 has to be caused by step 1. So without gaining this insight into step 1, it's hard for you to get the feeling toward the step 2. For that reason, I would say maybe going one by one. For example, first recognizing all sentient beings have in our mother. You reason your mind, really convince your mother in that. Transform your attitude so that you get that feeling spontaneously without a kind of a force. And so immediately after you really kind of manage to generate that all sentient beings up in our mothers, and by the time you're getting that spontaneously without the force, without artificial reasoning, and that will immediately lead you to the next, because the next one, so that you have a much almost like easier to do the next step. And so it's, by reasoning and transforming, the purpose is really to implant the seed so that the feeling will become spontaneous later. And when you see a child is falling down and the reaction from the mother is not something of forceful, it's a natural instinct, like inherent. She will just go there and grab the child. And that kind of I think reaction we try to achieve toward all the sentient beings. And for that it takes time and going through step by step, because one leads to the other one, and it's better. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
아니 랑가싱 같은데 해터링이 나와서 계속 중으로 다신임지 주고네로 다신임지 열로 장바에는 다신임지 열로 장바텔라야 누가 심지 탐제다 소소기 대화디 퍼져도 되기 상당히 동안디 솔랭기 삼로 코레나 퍼져도 김생지 통으로 왔으니 와 김생만도 나팔디 지기 랍싱이 말어 대인자고 나시기 까진 친구인 바데 팅팅하고 나시기 때도 왔으니 얘나야 스텝 샹다지가 됐으니로 다신임지고는 로장바 임바이나 장주기 쌤 단다 준준한테 송반의 장주기 쌤 정토고로 이나야 삼로 땅다 마시데 틴텐라 또 마저바 임바이나 니 대화디 콘솔을 띠기 동아딩의 링기를 삼로 코르하고 싶어도 왔습니다. 말해.
내 당고대 뒤송송 다시 냠비체 거거디 근데 야다 강 대화돼서 근데 디시체
디시
이내에 야대서 갖고 요랬어 마시데
디 메바 있는 하고 좋아 나랑 섬다 빼나 니 대화도 콜 띵이라 그러와 거기 동가 띵이라 삼로 주 코라라 당보 김세지 통거라와 김세 통용디 뭐 샘제 탐정하라 말에 니까린 친구를 마찬가 있나 니 대화도 콜 띵이 삼로 페이지 레알티 하고 메로 삼성도 말해 된다
제대로 So to generate Bodhichitta, this is not the only approach. We have another mind training approach, which is the exchange of self with others. And in that meditation, you are exchanging the sufferings, your happiness with the sufferings of the sentient being. And there's that approach which will also lead to Bodhichitta. But then, I think the problem is for the beginners, it's easier to follow this step, because when you try to exchange your happiness with another sentient being suffering, what is the ground for doing that? And your green that is like these sentient beings and desire for happiness. That's one reason. But then if you hear saying not only that, these sentient beings have been my mother, they were kind to me throughout my previous lifetime. And so this is an extra added kind of a strong reason. So this one, I think maybe for you will be easier to really engage in that practice.
Oh yes, I was just gonna say something about that. Number one, I am a mother and I have only one son. So when you talk about this, it makes a lot of sense. But when you were mentioning the exchanging self for other, it's really difficult. I've been thinking about this for maybe 5 years. I have this instruction from someone, because you feel sick. Nobody wants to, have somebody else's suffering. It's very difficult to think about. It's very hard practice to do. Really seriously say, even if you're only imagining and making, the false bodhicitta, it's still hard. When you're even driving your car, the other guy's going to cut you off and beat you, to the corner. You're like, you beat me. So, it's not something difficult. It's very difficult to do this, but it's a good meditation. But it can make you feel really sort of like sick, because you start to think, oh no, now I have their leprosy. Like if you take it really seriously, like it starts to make you scared. But I wanted to say that when you were mentioning about like your children, like when they're bad and you patiently deal with it, and you of course forgive them and ignore them when they're having temper tantrums and stuff. Sometimes when I behave this way with people, they don't know anything about Buddhism. They think you're just crazy or you're some kind of phony or hypocrite, because you never get like you don't let them do things that are not good for them. But
is that a question?
Well, yeah, it's a question, because how can you get over not sort of looking like you're crazy or something, like why are they still nice to me and I'm trying to do everything bad to them?
I think so long questions.
I'm sorry.
Geshe kenso, nangsi kenso. 다 도도죠, 도도 도다 숨듯이. 당고대 Geshe 수만 지지 근데 맨날 된데 레하도. 다시 냠지도 데스칼레도. 아바도 지 양단 내부터 랑 나서랑 얘가 같이 내셔버렸어. 주어봐. 니네 라바도 지금 좀 모든데 단좀 미치게 그냥까지 뒤인도 같이 쉬어도 광도산 대통도. 남자지 근데 맨날 좀 상당하지. 네, 거기도. 난 다른 Geshe라 데르소들 하고도 지금 부지부저봐 아마 되게 있다가 나중에 싸움다는데 내가 거야죠. 금저가는 뭐 파마게 부직 주고는데 그에 대해서 노르셔 된대 제스면에 지금 가서래 다들 증마가 까지 도와디 심심해 돼요. 이 주장과 아니 딜레 하도 타마데 거래스는데 좋아져 봐. 또 먼저 남배문에 진짜 상단 좀 봐. 남부 맹교도 좀 저대로 녀버려 했어. 상민데 나는 세계랍니다. 다시 냠just 녀선데도 미디게 냐마 미수 두자체 봐. 발레마 개비는 가진의 랭게 뭐서는 남부에 지금처럼 콘 녀버렸어. 야다진 소지 주스 받아 주고 봐. 직대를 찾아 내기로 봐. 또 나라서 단도 남부에 중민에서 랭게 왜야 산 돈도 파지 쪼아져 봐. 나무 맹교 지금도 되게는 관련 도움이 줬어.
다들은 예배지 샤워로. 그러나 내가 지나는 소소 유무유 전에 내가 전에 칸일이 도왔으니까. 가시 이제 뒤주도 심지 세는 무슨이 칸되어 왔으니까. 가시면은 내가 야가 지는 소속이 있다. 뒤준도 다 레군이 내가 야가 지는 무상이 되게 도왔으니. 이 군이다 무상을 찍고 찍냐래. 아니 무상이 찍기 심지 세는 무상을 걔랑 가지는 심지 세와를 쓸라나. 레 무상님한테 랭 가르쳐 주겠어요. 캔서야 돼. 그거는 계산줘요가 빼셨어야 된다고 그래요. 말해.
네.
근데
제가 야오신이고
빼셨다. 뭐 유튜브에
다시 프로그램 랜드도 좋아 가려요. 걔는 내가
딱 거기 가인서는 가인서는 퍼즐 미드로바들 남서 콘도 사이 모두 생겨라. 미 남고 많이 걔랑 가르치는 가수면 되려고 그러고. 그거는 계산줘요. 계산줘요 가지고 당고하고 그랬습니다. 계산돼 소스 저거 보면 소비 표현이 삼로 땅이로. 그리고 그래서 동물들 통과이나 동물들 공부이면 소소로 표현 뒤에 친구가 삼로 땅 그러면 카톡도 삼로 땅나 잡중에 되고 작은 거요. 디켄서 되지라.
내가 뜻 친구도 다 봐도 내 거지.
딱 타만데 딱 소소 개와 치면 또 소소 땅 밀리 된다는데 뭐 터베다 딱 된도 되고 되게 된다고. 다이 내가 지니까 직관에 빼셨으니 직관에 이나 내가 야가치니 미디 걔가 내가 가진의 심지 쓰기 라바 임바 있나 뭐 빼셔 된다라 인라 그러 추케만 이 미디 걔가 가진의 근염도 야래게 되래 걔가 가슴 내리게 들라바 있나 또 저와당이 잡중을 사와다 하이들 코로나 캡산주를 받아 저거 보면 걔네들이 연구를 쓰는 거 캡산제 삼로 땅에 가슴 대화를 모두 캡산 켜내면 뭐 내대와 가서 컬러도 말라바 임바에는 잡중을 받아.
So I'm going to answer the last question. When we engage in this kind of bodhisattva practices, when people harm us, instead of reacting to that, we try to, be patient about it. And then the non-Buddhists will say, "This is crazy. Why you're not hitting back? Why you're not getting rid of him?" This kind of approach. This is the question you posed, right? And here, the very important thing is there are people who are doing horrible jobs. In some cases, the butchers killing animals just to, doing this kind of work. And there are also other people who are doing a very comfortable, very fancy job. And then you go to ask the guy who's, maybe doing the butchering, saying, "Why did you killing all these people, animals?" He will say, "I'm doing it for the money," right? The guy who's doing also, the fancy job, he's also doing so for the money. So there's a benefit in that, regardless of how you, conduct your profession. Likewise, how we treat others, whether favorably or negatively, we have a goal in our mind. So either we treat them nicely, either when they're treating us badly, or either when they're treating us nicely. Our response is not for this kind of instant satisfaction. That's not our goal. Our goal is we have this ultimate goal of benefiting the sentient beings, attaining full enlightenment. So when we practice patience and attack the sufferings of the other sentient beings, in some cases when people look down on us, not react and practice patience, we have a very clear goal. We have a clear benefit we see out of that. We're not doing because we couldn't. So can you see there's the justification, how we behave. We have an ultimate goal. Like the butchers who doing horrible things, but he has a bigger goal. He is not into just killing the animals, but he's for after the money. So when we are being badly treated, and when we're not responding, we have a bigger goal behind that. So do not lose that goal, and then I think you'll find this useful.
먼저 낭비출라에 대 미션대기 약불러도 고콜말라 빼아보지도 나 취치긴 라야 되다 콩말라 독자라도 나 취치긴 라야 낭비출이네 말했으니로 저 미션대기 말라 뛰었던 것도 나 취야보치긴 라야 되다 아니 고신대 미션대 말라 독자 치고도 진행하도 취치긴 메라 나도 낭비출이네 말어 왔어 말해야 되더라 로 미지 야리게도 키 계기 랍투면서 라바이 바이나 계속한테 삼로 땅에 가좀 대봐라 그러 남비치 이렇게 남비치야 호민도스네 퍼지데 라바디 이 남비치 주요했으니 어때 남비치도 쌤네 교셨던 거래 뭐도 미션다 이때라다는 남비치야 그러나 미션다 이메라다는 남비치 그 마체가 되게 잘 말했으니로 소스님 교셨다는 된다라 이상 미션에 가를 나오는 말라 소소기 다 캡상데 삼로다니 내가 제일 개척 거였어요.
So the important point here is, as a Buddhist practitioner, our ultimate goal is to really transform and train our mind to kind of the internal transformation. And we are not practicing for public show. If you're doing some kind of a thing for the public show, of course you have to present things, impress people. But that's not the point of our practices. For that reason, if say we're having a debate or argument with someone, so the first thing important is how I really transform my mind, how I really use that for my Dharma practice. That's important, not how I should create a perception to other people. And it's that kind of goal of creating the perception, mostly the positive perceptions, and that shouldn't be a burden of a Buddhist practitioner. The Buddhist practitioner should really look inside and see how the different events and circumstances is really benefiting our practices. So we constantly examine our internal motivation.
Okay.
My question is about the difference between loving compassion and Mahakaruna. And the difference here was the personal responsibility. You said this is, once you get loving compassion, then the next natural evolution would be I get this personal responsibility to care for every single other being like it was my only son. This is Tlaksam, is that what it's called? Tlaksam. So this is scary for Westerners. How can I do that? How can one person take care of 7 billion humans and innumerable animals and insects, and then any other one? This is how is this possible?
Brahmi disumbo the tenging mo dinalya yung chambos ne jola dida ninji chamboni jola di nalya tagi disumbo Geshe la yung chambodi kandachi spuli out ke bigina 아니 ninji chambodi ji ge jinge yon de jesu ta so ga de beauty devani is cha de de 당 아주 좀 놓쳐도 가려서 니나는 내가 치셔대 말아서 지 ninji chambodi yung chambol야 가르친 거에서 직sem제디 대화 대전 주고면 심제도 동네 텐디 주고면 되게 대화 대마다 동네 좀 말해 지니스 봐 디도 놓쳐도 또 시다 쉬고 그래서 저는 디나에 미 제범 되려죠 세븐딜 되게 아무 동네에 가서 개와도 내 지니스 봐 디도 놓쳐도 되는 같이 좀더 사밀에 대 진짜지 그랬어요 그 아주 근데 저는 놓쳐도 되는 데 캐리한테 말했어 완전 뒤서 올라왔다 지금 최선 이 대만에서는 갑도 나서기 탄다 도와 심지터 다 7 빌리언이나 다 빌리언 주의나 면으로 디 된다디 나라라 지기를 콘소기 잡로 레레 좀 내가 집에 계속 말했으니 샘들을 규셨다야로 디 샘들 규셨 땅보다 치마 이게 남진이 예len치고로 남이 예len이 규체 디 된다로 소리했으니로 대라 때는다 샘 소소기 단다 갑도다 이 코지 된다 치니 코드들을 폴에서도 모여서도 딘데를 레레 체는 좋아요 말했으니 대말
이 좋았음 제든지 이 된다 지기 헬리치 아니 미래를 요소를 좋아했긴 요 말했으니 되게 말했으니 샘디 라파칼로다 티멜레바 마슈와다 샘디 당시데 왜세베 된다라 그러와 디 샘디 당시데 왜세베 된다라 나서 로 종거래 했으니 그러와 로 좋아했지 로디 종거를 때니 아니 칼레 나서 이제 남친이 녀린이 유로 드라이브 된다라 소디 된다라 했으니 다 남친이 녀린이 유 드라이브 남친 그룹잖아 다 7 billion 만도가 튜주 자인 이제 가져야네 샘지 전에 제 투투버를 봤습니다. 로정에 전달했어.
So this is of course true in a sense that if we look from a kind of our instant perspective, because it's crazy saying I'll do the happen, I'll take the responsibility of this individual, that individual. I mean, it's crazy. But that's what we're not talking about here. The most important thing what we're talking about here is training our attitude, transforming our attitude. So instead of normally not doing anything, but we're generating that kind of resolve in our mind, internal transformation, so that internally we have this kind of attitude of solving problems, generating happiness of all sentient beings. And you can train your mind in that aspect, that, you know, once you're able to transform that mind, it becomes the causes for your omniscience, the full enlightenment. And through training your attitude toward other sentient beings, from this kind of a very common limited perception to this unlimited, this amazing quality, and this really becomes the causes of our full enlightenment. And once you attain full enlightenment, then you don't have to worry about each individual. You have that potential to do that. And so by going into this incredibly amazing, I think, the mind stream, generating that mind stream, it really kind of help you to realize your clear light. We say it's really kind of clear light, right? It really helps you to actualize the clear light of your mind, and as a result, it helps you to actualize the full enlightenment. So that's why you shouldn't look this from a subject to object point of view, but rather really transforming this internal perception. And once you kind of are able to transform these, and that becomes causes for your the full enlightenment. And once you attain the full enlightenment, then it doesn't matter the numbers, whether it's 7 billion or 100 billion. You have that potential to help, to really free them from the suffering. So this is how you really should see it. So I'll continue the explanation later, since we have a very limited time now, but we'll go back to this issue again.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to sleep.
He's entering the clear light.
Alan became a magic
Tashi Poki Geshe Anatotram Riya Vingshi Nyinde Yampadi Sangha Shindu Mide Vivari Drapunanda Shinati Basho Hiranguratnamandala Kandinyatayami Gyadi Vyokun Sunam Yeshe Zokzokshin Sunam Yeshe Lejunwe Ramba Gunita Parsho. Thank you. Please keep teaching.
So hectic. 2 more weeks.
So we've asked if you could do 2 more weeks. Next week was supposed to be it is the last session for the 7 steps.
Yes,
next Thursday.
Yes.
But then if Geshe can, the following 2 Thursdays is Geshe-la's Thursdays at the 3 Jewels, if you would accept. Yeah. For anything.
So I'll provide instructions for each steps next week, saying this session, this is how you do it, and basically I'll go over them and provide further instruction for meditation next week.